Thanks for watching the WRAL YouTube page. I'm Luis Fernandez. He's Brian Murphy, sports investigative reporter. And Brian, we are talking Hockey Hall of Fame because for the 14th time now, since he's become eligible, Rod Brind'Amour is not a part of this newest class of inductees, which was announced Monday afternoon, the class of 2026.
Yeah, we thought maybe the Stanley Cup would help Rod Brind'Amour. There's been a lot of momentum around the Carolina Hurricanes. No Rod Brind'Amour, no Eric Staal either.
So, yeah, Eric Staal was eligible for the first time as a player. He just recently retired in the past few years here now. So when we look at just the Hockey Hall of Fame in general, for people who are not familiar with, not aware, it has two categories. Can you just talk about what those categories are?
Yeah, first of all, it's not the NHL Hall of Fame. It's the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Important note.
Yeah, so what you do in the international stage matters. Obviously, there is no women's NHL, and so women are eligible based on the leagues that they play in or their international careers. And there's an 18-member selection committee headed this year by a familiar name to Carolina fans. Ron Francis was in charge of the selection committee this year. And this 18-member committee, and they've actually voted on Monday, which I thought might have helped Brind'Amour's chances, given that he just won a Stanley Cup as a head coach. But really, there are two categories. There's players and builders. And the builders are coaches, general managers, probably commissioners, people of that ilk. And then there's another one for referees, and they can get in the builders category. So you're allowed 4 male players, 2 female players, and up to 2 builders. And this year we had 5 players, 4 male players, 1 female player, and a builder, Brian Burke, former GM, I think, of Vancouver, and played a lot of different roles in the NHL.
A long time, just kind of like team president, essentially, for him. So let's just go over that list really quick. But I do think, I wanted to make sure we brought that point up because that's such an important just talking point of this whole conversation is like, it doesn't matter if Rod Brind'Amour goes out there and wins 4 more Stanley Cups as a coach in the next 4 years. It doesn't necessarily improve his chances of getting to the Hall of Fame within this time frame. Yeah,
he would, he's certainly building a case as a builder.
Right.
And what's interesting, a guy I've compared him to a lot in the last couple of days is Joe Torre. I don't know how many people are familiar with Joe Torre's career, but as a baseball player, he was borderline Hall of Famer. And then he went on to manage the Yankees, won 4 titles, and obviously built a Hall of Fame career as a coach and got in eventually to the Hall of Fame. There's not really like a hockey life category.
Right.
Because obviously Rod Brind'Amour, I think, would be in as a hockey life guy.
A lifetime achievement.
A contributor, a contributor to the game.
Right.
But he may have to build that Torre-esque case and build a case as a builder, build a case as a coach, and then get in that way.
So I wanted to go ahead and just go over the 6 people that got into the Hall of Fame. We'll touch on these quickly, and feel free just to chime in whenever I say someone's name. So we mentioned Brian Burke, a longtime kind of team president. In that role, he was the builder category. Then you had Patrice Bergeron, who Bruins legend.
Yeah, and he had 6 Selke Awards or Selke trophies, and that goes to the best defensive forward in the league. Important context here because Rod Brind'Amour has 2 of those. He has a 2-time Selke Award winner. Bergeron, I think everyone pretty much thought it was his first year of eligibility, thought he was pretty much a lock when you looked at the eligible people in this class.
Right. One of those, the NFL equivalent being someone like Luke Kuechly, who just became eligible, first ballot Hall of Fame type person. Going down the list, we have Cindy Curley, who is one of the women that was put in, longtime Providence player, one of these just women who's just kind of a pioneer for the women's game in general. Pekka Rinne, a longtime goalie for the Nashville Predators, someone who was consistently at the top of the league when you looked at goalies during his time.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Carey Price is another name that got in. Carey Price had a higher peak.
Right.
He was the MVP of the league and won the Vezina Trophy as the best goalie in the same year. Pekka Rinne probably had a better longevity,
right.
a longer time where he was very good, whereas Carey Price, who got in his second year of eligibility, seemed to have the higher peak. Right. So an interesting peak versus long-term value, at least as it relates to those 2 goalies.
And both of those goalies getting in. And that's just like with any other Hall of Fame, when you're dealing with a limited number of inductees, you have so mmany subcategories of players, of contributors to the game that you have to kind of sort through. It's, how often is it that not a single goalie gets in, or you don't have that immediate first ballot person that comes in and takes up a spot. The important things to think of.
And most people thought Price was going to get in, but if you look, Pekka Rinne actually had more wins than Carey Price. So you start to, if Carey Price is a Hall of Famer, is Pekka Rinne a Hall of Famer? And I mean, these are the conversations I think we're going to get to when it comes to Rod Brind'Amour as well.
Right. The last one on the list here is Keith Tkachuk, the father of the Tkachuk brothers, who, if you follow the hockey, they're now playing together on the Florida Panthers. And he had 538 goals in his career, 35th all-time, and essentially everyone who scored more goals than him, or nearly everyone, is in the Hall of Fame. So his case, once again, makes sense.
Yeah, the only one guy, I think, Patrick Marleau, the only player with more goals not already in the Hall of Fame or not eligible that isn't in the Hall of Fame. So Keith Tkachuk gets in, but when you look at his numbers, they don't look all that different than Rod Brind'Amour's numbers. Right. And I think this is where you're going to have these arguments. There are a lot of guys getting in these classes where you look at them and compare them to Brind'Amour and you say, well, they're basically the same. I don't think Tkachuk won a Stanley Cup. Brind'Amour obviously won the 2006 Stanley Cup as the captain. He has those 2 Selke awards. Neither Tkachuk nor Brind'Amour, I think, would have been considered the best player in the game or one of the 3 best forwards in the game at any point in their career. And so how do you differentiate between some of these guys? And obviously that's the job of the 18-member selection committee, not me and you, but you start to see a guy like Tkachuk get in and some of the guys that have gotten in recent years, and you say, wait a second, Rod Brind'Amour's career is, equal to that or maybe even slightly better than that.
So it's then the question starts to become, what are people valuing from these careers that these players have that Brind'Amour necessarily might not have? And let's look at some just the quick hitters for the stats here. Brind'Amour played in nearly 1,500 games in his career, so he was someone who longevity, that kind of Iron Man status was always his big thing. Late in his career, coming off of the ACL injury, coming back for one more season, that's kind of who he was. And then from a points perspective, he had nearly 1,200 points, 452 goals, 732 assists. You mentioned the 2 Selke trophies, going to the best defenseman in the NHL, an All-Star game appearance, and then the playoffs, especially during that hurricane time frame, especially when you think of it, he had a lot of success, 111 playoff points in his career, which is much more than someone like Keith Tkachuk had.
Yeah, he made it to 3 finals, 1 with Philadelphia, 2 with the Hurricanes, and then won the title. And also for a lot of these players, Tkachuk as well, Eric Stahl as well, the 2005 season was wiped out.
Right.
Rod Brind'Amour won the Selke Trophy the next year, 06, and the next year, 07. So you're talking about right in his prime. An entire year was wiped out by the lockout, the introduction of the salary cap, labor strife. And so that would have been a prime year for Rod Brind'Amour that's just sort of wiped off the books. Now, a lot of the guys that are getting in right now either missed the 05 season because of that or you shorten their career in some way. So, but, you look at it, right? Could Rod have been a 3-time Selke Trophy winner, given that he won it the next 2 years?
Right. It's a really kind of fine line to dance there. I understand the excitement and the circumstance that comes around being someone who votes for these Hall of Fames, but you are always just ripped apart for some of your decisions sometimes. And so with Rod too, I think what I want to circle back to is the way his coaching legacy impacts the way we view him as a player. Is it fair to say that, especially here in Raleigh, in North Carolina, when we think of his success in the NHL, we are indeed influenced by what you've seen happen as a head coach, where he's just had so much success?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, 8 years as a head coach, 8 trips to the playoffs, 8 years in which they've won at least one series. The 2020 season is a little funky there, but they did win a series in that postseason. 4 trips to the Eastern Conference Final, 1 Stanley Cup appearance, and a Stanley Cup victory, and face of the franchise. I mean, Rod Brind'Amour has been a member of this franchise for about half a quarter century and is by far the most iconic member of the entire franchise. I just refer to him as franchise icon, Rod Brind'Amour, a lot. He'll probably have a statue outside of Lenovo Center. His jersey's already hanging in the rafters, his number. And you'd imagine with a few more years of this, if Carolina, and obviously they have the core to do it, if they could sustain this success for another 5, 6, 7 years, then you're starting to build a Hall of Fame case, particularly if you can win another cup. 2 cups as a coach, I think would be enough to get you in, given all the regular season success. And then I don't know, He's only the fourth player ever to win a cup as a captain and then win a cup as a coach with the same franchise. I mean, you start to add all these things together, and clearly it's a Hall of Fame case. But because they have distinct player and builder categories, you wonder at some point, will someone say, well, this guy belongs in the Hall of Fame for all of his contributions to hockey. Let's find a way to get him in.
Right. And that's, to me, that's going to be the big question, because it's not a matter of, with Rod Brind'Amour, of if. It's more a matter of when and in which category. That to me seems, because he's like, when you think about the builders, right? He's like a perfect example of that. Someone who has had the success off the ice, someone who through his actions, really helped to grow hockey in the South tremendously, taking a franchise that was on the verge of maybe having to move again and just, creating this invigoration of passion and energy that we saw on Saturday with the championship parade.
Right.
So like, he fits all those things, but as a player, he's also like, he's very good, so it's like, it just kind of depends on how you look at it, how you decide to split that.
Yeah. And I don't know the exact qualifications for coach, but if you get a second Stanley Cup, you get 10 years, 12 years as a coach, 12 playoff appearances, 2 cups. I mean, that you're starting to really build a legacy and a Hall of Fame case in that category. And we'll see. I mean, Hall of Fames, the shape of them are changing all the time. The criteria is kind of changing all the time, and you do wonder when Rod hangs it up, when the totality of what he's done in hockey is measured, that they find a way to blur the line between player, builder, and say this guy had a Hall of Fame career in the NHL or Hall of Fame career in professional hockey. He deserves a spot in the Hall of Fame.
It's a very unique case.
Yeah, it is a unique case. And I went back and looked at some of the coaches that got in. Some of them got in as players. They had Hall of Fame careers as players, and then they were successful coaches. Many of them did not have anywhere close to the career that Rod had, and they got in solely as coaches. It's hard to find a case of someone who's, I keep using the Joe Torre example, but it's hard to find a case of someone who's Hall of very good, knocking on the door of Hall of Fame entry as a player, and then goes and is now knocking on the door in terms of Hall of Fame case as a coach. It just, maybe in the NBA there's some closer examples, but it was hard for me to come up with someone in hockey that, in part because coaches, get dismissed so easily.
Right.
It's rare to have a coach 8 straight seasons with one team, playoffs. Tom Dundon told me, Rod Brind'Amour can coach as long as he wants.
Yeah. That the Stanley Cup especially helps out with that one. I think one of the biggest things you could say about Rod Brind'Amour is that chances are, it just kind of sums up everything about him, is chances are his main thought is he's bummed that Eric Stahl didn't get into the Hall of Fame. Like that to me kind of feels like a good summary of just Rod Brind'Amour's hockey character.
Yeah, and I was listening to the announcement, so people don't dream of being in the Hall of Fame, right? They dream of winning the Stanley Cup.
Right.
If I told you 2 Stanley Cups, number retired with the franchise, a franchise icon, in some ways that's probably better, almost as good as a Hall of Fame, Hall of Fame induction. I'm sure deep down Rod wants it, and he's only 55. Yep. He's got plenty of time to get in, keep burnishing his case as a coach, and eventually make it to the Hockey Hall of Fame one day.
Things are coming up Rod Brind'Amour right now, a lot of times. So I think he's going to be okay, and I do think he'll be in the Hall of Fame eventually. Brian Murphy, thank you so much.
Thank you.